Good evening to yet another episode of with the International Internship University. I'm so happy to meet you all once again on this platform. International Internship University is a leading virtual education system and a global brand confederation, which is most valuable and trusted worldwide and well reputed in delivering innovative programs. Globally, good evening and welcome to yet another episode of with International Internship University, which is a leading virtual education system and a global brand confederation, which is the most valuable and trusted worldwide and well reputed in delivering innovative programs. Globally, it is a trusted name for quality training programs and is committed to providing better and virtual education to all the young learners of the globe. In a short span of time, IIU has spread its wings in 195 countries and 6 continents under the strong leadership of its visionary founder, Mr. Piyush Pandit sir, a committed and inspiring social activist, a passionate educationist. From the last 2 decades, the IIU has been providing education to students from various and social cultural backgrounds. Recently, IIU International Internship University had the World Education Summit and Awards. I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate them for organizing such a beautiful and grandiose event with Swarna Bharat Parivar Trust, SPB, on the 9th of April at International Center, New Delhi, India. The summit aimed to promote digital education and brought together experts from various countries to discuss the ways to improve the welfare of education across the globe. The summit was attended by representatives from 15 countries, and the event was graced by the presence of eminent personalities such as our founder of IIU and SPB Trust, Piyush Pandit sir, Advocate Sanjeev Sahal sir, Additional Advocate General Supreme Court of India and Professor Darin Somnani, London, Mrs. Universe 2022 as the chief guest. In addition, several influential personalities and educators and change makers from India and abroad attended the event. During the event, over 101 global educators and edu-leaders, principals, directors, change makers, and women and influential personalities were honored with awards for the commendable work in the education sector and towards the society by the worthy hands of eminent dignitaries. The summit also recognized outstanding individuals through awards such as Bharat Shiksha Samman, Inspiring Women Awards, International Influencer Awards, and the Best Global Institution Awards. I think IIU should have taken the award. The event witnessed Mr. Piyush Pandit sir receiving a widespread recognition for his contribution towards fulfilling his mission that no child should be deprived of education worldwide. In addition, 10 foreign panelists discussed the world education policy and a concept coined by Mr. Piyush Pandit sir, which is expected to be the game changer in the education industry to bring revolution, that is, educational renaissance. And more than anything, it's the highlight that IIU promoted free education for all and announced a scholarship of INR, Indian rupees, 5 lakh to James International School for providing free education to the deserving students. The Worldwide Summit and Awards provided a platform for experts from various countries to come together and discuss the ways to improve the education sector. The summit success was a testament to Mr. Piyush Pandit sir's vision of promoting digitalized education for the betterment of society. The World's Education Summit and Awards was a great initiative by SPB Trust and IIU as a stepping stone. I would say it's a milestone of worldwide education. So we should congratulate IIU for this commendable effort. So with heartiest congratulations from the bottom of my heart to each and every one who is associated with IIU, I would like to go inside today's program. Thank you so much. Well, today we are going to talk about cognitive sciences in interdisciplinary learning. Cognito ergo sum. I think, therefore, I am here today. And I believe in one strong thing. Mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled, as said by Plutarch. Some of the other eminent persons across the globe have mentioned that the world we have created is a process of our thinking. It cannot be changed without changing our thinking, as said by Albert Einstein. The essence of independent mind lies not in what it thinks, but how it thinks, as said by Christopher Hitchens. All these are related to the thought process, which needs a trigger, the spark. The trigger is a stimuli and action is the response. As we all know, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. When there is a thought, the thought leads to action. But very importantly, we should be very careful on how we think. That's what we are going to see. And that is what the whole concept of cognitive science is all about. Cognitive science studies the human mind and brain, focusing on how the mind represents and manipulates knowledge and how mental representations and processes are realized in the brain. As we all know, just to have a recap, we made brain and its domains. Professor Benjamin Bloom proposed his taxonomy for learning in 1956 and divided the education objectives into 3 domains that included cognitive, that's the mental, which deals with the knowledge and understanding, affective domain, which deals with the emotional feelings and attitude and involves our feelings and emotions, which emotionally and also appreciation, enthusiasm, motivation, attitudes, all these things come under affective domain. And the third domain is a psychomotor domain, which relates to the physical ability. Those are the skills, coordination, the physical movement. Believe me, a holistic lesson developed by a teacher requires the inclusion of all these domains in constructing learning tasks for the students. It's not that ask them to think, guide them to how to think. The diversity in such learning tasks creates comparatively well-rounded, holistic, comprehensive, and inclusive learning experience that meets several learning styles and learning modalities. When it comes to the cognitive domains or a great brain, what happens there? This cognitive science is an interdisciplinary field in those researchers from psychology, neuroscience, linguistics, philosophy, computer science, and anthropology seeking to understand the mind, considering the findings that are strong and clear enough to merit the classroom application, thereby creating an advantage for the learner's benefit. That's the impact, that's the outcome that we expect, right? These include encoding, storage, retrieval, all these required from the memory domain, such as the successful memory phenomenon and the performance. In these domains, multiple essential features are necessary for understanding the processes involved. So, a brief history about this cognitive science. When did this start? When all these processes started? We are talking about thought process, we are talking about cognitive development, we are talking about science, cognitive science and everything. When did it start? Since the beginning of time, man has tried to understand his mind. Even today we do it. Hardly we achieve it, right? Some of the earliest writers spoke of the wonderful thought and the foolishness and the wisdom that mankind is capable of, often in equal measure. It wasn't until the 1800s. However, the science of psychology really began to develop, particularly in the field of experimental psychology. At this time, scientists adopted the theory of behaviorism, an idea that certain behaviors were programmed and would occur as a biological reaction to the stimuli. That's what we saw as a stimuli and the response. In 1960s, cognitive psychology became predominant, and since 1970s, more than the 60s. And it all started with this great gentleman, Mr. Wilhelm Wundt, and who was a father of psychology, the founder of modern psychology, opened his first psychology lab in 1869, and he wrote the psychology textbook applied to the laboratory checklist to the study of mind. It was followed by a short while later, Mr. Sigmund Freud conducted case studies to support his theories and ideas, which was again followed by eminent personalities and great scientists. In 1950s, cognitive revolution began when many researchers like Mr. Miller, Mr. Broadbent, Mr. Chomsky, Mr. Newell developed mind-based theories based on computational procedures and complex representations that came up with the derivations of cognitive sciences. Cognitive science means what? Let's see. It means concern with knowing. It was derived from the Latin word cognitivus. That means to get to know, to acquire knowledge, and more at cognition. Now, what is this cognition? Cognition is the act of thinking, perceiving, and understanding. The word cognition is often used in scholarly or formal writing about learning and thinking. However, you can use it to describe whatever happens when you use it for your own brain power to complete a crossword puzzle or even remember mathematical equations for a test. The psychological result of this perception results in reasoning and learning and reasoning. So cognition makes it possible for you to learn even a foreign language. So understanding should be distinguished from the social, emotional, and creative development and the ability. Cognitive skills and knowledge involve acquiring factual information, often the knowledge that can be easily tested. Thus, cognitive science evolved into a growing field of study that deals with the human perception, thinking, and learning. So, a central tenet of cognitive science is that complete understanding of the mind and the brain. That means we normally, in the colloquial language, we call it as mood, cannot be attained by studying only at one level. So it is a repeated task which has to be consistently handled on. A simple example would be a problem of remembering a phone number and recalling later. That's what is the cognitive sciences in simple words. So cognitive science studies however the mind works, functions, and behaves. Is how the mind works, functions, and behaves. As a scientific field of study, cognitive science requires applying multiple existing disciplines such as philosophy, neuroscience, artificial intelligence to understand how the brain makes a decision and performs a task. Cognitive science seeks to understand the intelligence and behavior, which can help humans in many ways, such as by developing educational programs or building more innovative devices. Cognitive science is again an interdisciplinary scientific study of mind and its processes with input from linguistics, psychology, neuroscience, philosophy, computer science, artificial intelligence, and anthropology. It examines the nature, the task, and the functions of cognition. What are the different cognitive science theories that we have seen? And it could be in the form of a formal logic or rules or concepts or analogies or images, connectionism, theoretical neuroscience, Bayesian, deep learning, etc., etc., etc. But all these theories have an explanation pattern. For example, in case of concepts, people have a set of concepts that establish a part of kind of hierarchies and other associations. As we can see, neurons, atoms, formation, chemical bonds, etc. Many cognitive science theories represent this. And cognitive science is here broadly divided as a huge study of human mind, including the mental processes and architecture. Cognitive science methods. Cognitive scientists today often use computational modeling and theorizing to understand the mind and its intelligence. This will usually involve experimentation with willing human subjects. For example, undergraduates will often take part in the laboratory experiments involving different types of thinking that are studied under controlled conditions. These experiments often involve deductive reasoning, where subjects form and apply ideas to various problems. One famous example of cognitive experiment is known to be the Stroop test, where participants are shown as words on screen, for example, red color, and in a range of different colors, and say what color of the word is. So what they will say, the red will be in yellow color. So you will say red or yellow. So that's what is this cognitive test is, this application of mind. The problem is that the test is designed to confuse the brain so that the word red may be displayed in yellow font. These tests are designed to measure the logical thought and assess how quickly the brain suffers stress when it gets an answer wrong. On the outline, very importantly, relating to today's topic, how can we relate this cognitive science to our education? As outlined principles for the future of teaching, learning, and assessment, these are the 12 norms that we have to follow. Early literacy and numeracy are the vital foundations of broad and balanced learning. Curriculum coherence in line with the curriculum content and standards, teaching practices, learning resources and assessments remain fundamental to the high equity and high attainment of all learners. Curriculum and assessment and all other requirements should be manageable load for all teachers. Effective learning should be built on the variety, should be a well-managed mix of adaptable approaches and models. Excellence in teaching and elevated attainment can be supported by well-designed and carefully chosen technology that can support teaching and attainment. Well-trained and well-supported teachers are the central to the high-quality pedagogy, high attainment, and well-being of the learners. Access to high-quality teaching learning materials is essential for high-quality, manageable education at all ages. Dependable assessment is a vital social justice. Is vital for social justice, learning support, and equitable progression. Clear standards on the importance of equity, accessibility, and progression for all learners. Equity and high attainment can be achieved hand in hand. First and the second language skills are essential for all learners, including English as a language of internal communication. So in those 12 norms which are to be followed for as outlined principles for the future of teacher learning assessment, evidence and cognitive science should inform the teaching practices. So we have to look at our teaching practices to involve or to integrate cognitive science into it. Examples of how cognitive science evidence can be used in this education. Many studies have investigated the potential for evidence from cognitive science to inform teaching learning. Some of the interesting relate to the usefulness of retrieval practice in learning, school sciences, and the use of cognitive science as a means of improving mathematics teaching and learning. Here we take a good look of examples to see what benefits can arise, but also what can happen when the theory overshadows the evidence. Using retrieval practice to enhance science learning. Evidence of cognitive science has challenged the commonly held belief that elaborative study is better for learning than retrieval practice. Elaborative study methods requires learners to organize new material and distinguish unique features of terms and concepts in the service of future retrieval. An example of such a method involves learners drawing a concept map of how they can understand the information and make connections between the concepts using reference material such as textbook. A retrieval practice involves retrieving knowledge from memory, that is reactivating the understanding and response to such a question. Retrieval is not simply reproducing knowledge. It is a more complex process that involves reconstructing knowledge which has been brought to the mind. Retrieval practice is a promising approach to improving teaching and learning, especially the learning with 3 R's: recall, recognition, and relearning. Use cognitive science evidence to improve teaching learning in mathematics. Little Johnson colleagues are focused on how cognitive science and the classroom-based research can maximize mathematical learning. They have explicitly drawn on 2 sets of cognitive science findings. When considering one thing, people tend to focus on surface features. So for example, when you study about the geometrical patterns, this is the usual thing. And so many questions have come up. How many squares are there when squares are put inside the triangles and so many things? When considering a pair of things, people tend to note critical standard features of each item and similarities and differences between two things process the aids learning. Say, for example, when we look at the living things, what is the lesson objective that we write? Recognize or look into their current world and recognize and able to understand or enumerate the similarities and differences between them, right? Looking at the things around. So all these things, comparing things can improve learning, guiding students in the mathematical conventions such as noticing, practicing, graphical conventions and interpreting visualization, example, graphs can improve the comprehension of visualizations. Revisiting material learned earlier and actively retrieving material from long-term memory in a low-stake environment can improve the durability of learning. Of course, last but not the least, scaffolding, which is very, very important, which we need to really go back and think and act and check whether you are in the right path, adjusting support to reflect the learner's level of performance, such as using hints and questions, of course, can promote deeper learning. So to conclude, high-level process for applying cognitive science to teaching practice. Cognitive scientists test hypotheses in controlled experiments. Educators and cognitive scientists translate findings to potential teaching practices. Educators and cognitive scientists trial these potential teaching practices in education context. Policymakers and teachers apply the teaching practices which are successful in trials. So how do we conclude? Cognitive science is an area of study that usually inform education policy and practice. However, for evidence from cognitive science to have a desired effects of maximizing learning and improving teaching, it needs to be interpreted and used appropriately. By whom? By the teachers. In addition, its effectiveness in education settings needs to be first tested, very importantly. That's the risk management comes in, before it can form the basis of the education policy and practices. As a figure above shows, cognitive scientists and educators should collaborate to translate cognitive science findings into potential teaching practices. These potential teaching practices should be then trialed in education settings to ascertain their effectiveness. If satisfactory evidence of their effectiveness is generated from the trials, they could then be widely applied in education practice. So we talked about what is cognitive and what is cognitive theory. What are the strategies for cognitive theories? What is cognition? And how does our brain works in cognition? And what are the different practices? How we could relate the cognitive sciences? Who are the researchers who have contributed for this cognitive science? And how these researchers and these things can be applied in a teaching practice to make our teaching more effective. Moving ahead, how we can make our teaching and learning practice more effective with the use of cognitive science. That's what we are going to see. Summary. What is cognition? Cognition can simply be defined as the mental processes and abilities in which people engage on a daily basis, such as memory, learning, problem solving, equation, reasoning, and decision making. Cognition helps to generate new knowledge through mental processes and also helps to use the knowledge that people have in daily life. Educational psychologists were especially interested in studying the cognitive process of individuals to growth and development of the children. Now, stages of cognitive development from children from birth to adulthood. So everybody, all educators mostly would have heard this name, Jean Piaget, is specifically important in this sphere since he presented the stages of cognitive development in children from birth to adulthood. As we are going to apply, we have discussed about cognitive sciences being applied in learning environment. Now, learning environment includes the students whom we are going to administer. So that also to be taken care. So we should know the cognitive development about the students also. They are when it is from birth to 2 years, they are in a sensory motor stage where only the sensory organs, eyes, ears, nose, all senses, it works basically on the 5 senses. Pre-operational stage, that means 2 years to 7 years. That is actually the stage of foundation and key stage, that where they learn to explore and learn new things. Concrete operational stage comes from 7 to 11 years, where it's kind of a middle school learning. And formal operation stage from adolescence to adulthood. So when we know our students much better, which stage they are, we will be able to apply those activities related to that particular age group, which are more relevant to that particular age group. So that's where these theories of according to the age level is very, very important that as educators, we should be aware of. So cognition is defined as a mental action and process of acquiring knowledge and understanding through thought, experience, and senses. So what are the cognitive skills that one acquires during this learning process? It's perception, visual perception, auditory perception. Attention is again a skill. Focused attention, sustained attention, divided attention. Memory is again a skill. Short-term memory, working memory, long-term memory, visual memory, auditory memory. Logical and reasoning, deductive reasoning, and inductive reasoning. Different types of, we'll be seeing about them as we move further. Different types of cognitive processes that are involved in it. They include attention. When it comes to attention, attention is a cognitive process which leads to the brain that allows people to focus on specific stimuli in the environment. Playing dart, looking at the particular point with keenness, that is attention. Language. Language and language development are the cognitive processes that involve the ability to understand and express the thoughts through spoken and written words. This allows us to communicate with others and play an important role in the organization of our thought as well. As many of you, when you are bilingual or multilingual, you normally tend to think in your own language and then you translate and then you communicate. So there is always a delay in the communication process. That means you are still acquiring the skill of the cognitive process that when it comes to the language is concerned. But it comes with the flow, it comes with the practice, it comes with the consistency. Learning. Learning requires cognitive processes involved in taking new things, very important. What I have learned today, what did I know before, what am I learning, what I'm going to learn from now. Synthesizing information and integrating with the previous knowledge, that is very important. When we say previous knowledge, it normally relates to the memory. Memory is the important cognitive process that allows the people to encode, store, and retrieve information. It is a crucial component in the learning process and allows people to retain knowledge about the world and their personal histories. Perception. Perception is again a cognitive process that allows people to take in the information through their own senses, then utilize this information to respond and interact with the world. Thought. Thought is again an essential part of every cognitive process that we have seen. It allows people to engage in decision-making, problem-solving, and higher reasoning. So, moving ahead, the skills required and acquired in the process of cognition are, according to Bloom's taxonomy expanded, process of least, we have to always go from down. It's sensation, then comes language, then perception. When it comes to perception, it's visual, auditory, and processing speed. Then the second stage is attention. When it comes to attention, as we have seen before, it is focused attention, sustained attention, and divided attention. So we will be able to categorically tell our students what kind of skill or which skill are they into. When it comes to the remembrance and memory, it is sensory memory, short-term memory, working memory, long-term memory, visual and auditory memory, and sequential memory. When it comes to the understanding, it is logical and reasoning. The process of reasoning, ability to draw conclusions, ability to make inferences and see relationship, important for reading comprehension. So The next stage is, these are the cognitive skills that are applied when it comes to the application of the Bloom's taxonomy, which moves further, which tapers towards when you are applying, you are able to analyze, evaluate, and then create. So in this process, what is very, very important, once the creation is done also, retrieval practice is a promising approach to improve the learning with 3 R's: recall, recognition, and relearning, just to make the learning process more successful. So cognition helps what people know and think, whereas cognitive factors in learning involves various cognitive components like attention, perception, executive function, and reasoning. It also involves various strategies that one uses to learn something new. On the other hand, what improves the whole learning process is not cognition, but metacognition. This is how people think about their own learning. How does it benefit us? Metacognitive factors involve monitoring and evaluation of the cognitive factors. You may learn in the learning process with all these skills of attention, perception, executive function, reasoning, etc., etc. You will be learning, but how well you have learned. Have you learned it to the objective? That is decided by the metacognition. So why? Because it helps you to monitor and evaluate and improve the final product. So let's growing in the metacognitive garden. Let's start growing in the metacognitive garden. That is, I am thinking, I am noticing, and I'm wondering. We have created a society that honors the servant. But have we forgotten the gift? That's what we should think, because our fruitful thing lies here in the gift. That is the learning of the learners. So the intuitive mind is a sacred gift, but a rational mind is a faithful servant. Hope you all agree with me. So what is metacognition? Thinking about your own thinking. We need to develop an awareness on what we are doing, where we are going, how are we going there. We need to know what to do when we do not know what to do. So all these things, it's not only for learners, it is for all stakeholders, normally even educators, even teachers. So we should always know what are we doing, where are we going, how are we going there, are we doing right? We need to know what is to be done, and we need to know when we do not know what to do, that also we should know. So it's a kind of self-regulation, self-monitoring, that the students monitor their own comprehension and accessing their own abilities without teachers' help, which is very important. Such a self-regulated learning will always yield its fruits when it comes to the student learning. Such self-regulation or the metacognitive skills are the one of the ultimate goals of learning, where the student will take the responsibility of his or her own learning process. So metacognition is literally beyond knowing what one knows and doesn't know, promoting student ability to self-monitor levels of understanding and predict how well she or he will do on a particular task. That means, am I capable? Will I be able to do? If I want to do it, what are the things, what are the skills I should have more? So looking into yourself, you are able to improve yourself, and you are able to equip yourself, able to empower yourself so as to be successful in the learning process. So metacognition is thinking about thinking, and knowledge and understanding of what we know, how we think, including the ability to regulate our thinking as we are on the task. So it helps students to self-regulate, which is very, very important. So what is metacognition? Metacognition is thinking about thinking. It allows us to complete a given task well through planning, monitoring, evaluating, and comprehending. This means while cognitive process allows normal functioning of individuals, metacognition takes it to the higher level of making a person more aware of his or her cognitive process. So metacognition helps you to improve on all these processes. It helps you to plan very nicely, well ahead. It helps to monitor your performance. It helps to evaluate yourself, and it helps to monitor, it helps to comprehend your progress. So for example, imagine a child who is completing a mathematical question. The cognitive process would allow the child to complete the task. However, the metacognition would help to double check through monitoring and evaluating the answer. In this sense, metacognition helps to verify and build the confidence of the child. This is why it can be said as metacognition helps in successful learning. So I think, hope everybody will agree with the fact that metacognition help impact the learning process and the outcome. Metacognition is the awareness of one's own learning and the thought process, definitely. It entails understanding of the goals of the learning processes, figuring out the best strategies for learning, and assessing whether the learning goals are being met. Metacognitive strategies empower students to think about their own thinking. This awareness of the learning process enhances their control over their own learning. It also enhances personal capacity for the self-regulation and managing one's own motivation for learning. Metacognition, simply put, is simply the process about thinking. It is important in every aspect of school and life, since it involves self-regulation, reflection on one's current position, future goals, potential actions and strategies, and results. So when students are metacognitive, they understand it better, themselves as learners, and also the given task, whether I will be able to do what I know, what I need to know, and the various strategies, how to use them in a variety of situations. Say, for example, 4 types of self-addressed metacognitive question. When it comes to comprehension, what is this question? And connection, how is this problem like one I already solved? Is this the same one? Strategic, why is this strategy the best to solve the problem? Reflection, does the solution really make sense? So it tells them about before, during, and after the instruction process. So most closely associated with teachers' instruction practices, teachers' metacognitive practices, if done effectively, it can lead to student self-regulation and learning practices. As we have seen, when students are metacognitive, they learn better. I can apply my knowledge in various situations. This is my task. I know my steps. I have ideas and solutions. And what is metacognition that you have seen? Awareness of one's own actions and their effects, posing internal questions to find the information and meaning, developing mental maps, pictures, and plans, monitoring plans through a process and revising plans when they do not work, self-evaluating a complete plan. And that's how, what is the outcome? It shapes active rather than passive learner, giving students a self-control over learning, promotes deeper learning, makes students aware of their own thinking. So why is metacognition important? It improves their planning skills, monitoring skills, evaluating skills, resourcing skills, grouping skills, note-taking skills, pre-testing skills, and complex tasks, and also helps them in summarizing, deduction, induction, concept mapping, peer instruction, elaboration, Socratic dialogues, and knowledge and KW charts and graphic organizers. Sorry, I missed it. I should have started this sharing before. Sorry. Metacognition in summary, thinking about thinking, occurs before and after doing a task, before plan, during self-monitor, after evaluate and improve, and adaptation of the same in a learning environment involves strategies and approaches. So very quickly, moving further, before going to the instructional strategies, because I forgot to share the screen, I would like to have a quick run through of what we have done before so that we can have a look at it. Sorry about it. So here we started. This is what we thought about. I think, therefore I am. The mind is definitely not a vessel to be filled. It's a fire to be kindled. So cognitive science is a study of the human mind and brain, focusing on how the mind represents and manipulates. So we talked about brain and its domains, cognitive, affective, psychomotor, and a holistic lesson developed by the teacher requires inclusive of all these three, cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. So what is cognitive domain? It comes under the cognitive science, which is an interdisciplinary field of researchers, psychology, neuroscience, linguistics, philosophy, computer science, anthropology, all is about understanding the mind. So when it comes to the brief history, where it all started, we talked about different people who have contributed to it, right from 1800 century. So Mr. Wilman Windet founded the psychology laboratory, and he was the father of psychology, which was followed by Sigmund Freud to support his theories and ideas. And there were other researchers who have contributed to the cognitive revolution. Mr. Miller, Mr. Broadbent, Mr. Chomsky, Mr. Newell, all contributed to the revolution of cognitive sciences. Cognitive science, what does it mean? As we all seen, it is concerned with the knowledge, how to acquire knowledge. It's an active act of thinking, perceiving, and understanding. And it's just a derivation. And how does it contribute? It contributes to the mind functions and behaves. And these are the cognitive science theories normally which are being used. That is formal logic, rules, in the form of formal logic, rules, concept, analogies, images, connectionism, theoretical neuroscience, Bayesism, and deep learning. So cognitive science methods, when we talk about cognitive science method, it is computational modeling and the theorizing to understand the mind and intelligence. And also it involved deductive reasoning such that the child is able to measure the logical thought and access how quickly the brain suffers the stress and to get when it comes to wrong answer. So this is very, very important. This slide is very, very important because it outlines the principles for the future of teacher learning and assessment process. As we all know, we as educators, we have to follow all these 12 norms which I mentioned. In that, the evidence of cognitive and science should inform the teaching practices. So we should involve the cognitive science norms into our teaching practice. Now, how can we do that? Is that to have the usefulness of retrieval practice in the learning of school sciences and the use of cognitive science as a means of improving mathematical teaching and learning. So when it comes to the retrieval practice of science learning, how does it help the student? That we have seen. Drawing a concept map, making connection between the concepts, relating it to the memory and asking a question. So it's a promising approach to improve the learning process with the 3 R's of recall, reasoning, and relearning. So using cognitive science as evidence to improve the mathematical concept is that when considering one thing, and people tend to focus on other features, and when considering pair of things, people tend to note on the critical structures in each similarities and find the similarities and differences between the things. When it comes to comparing things, and interpretation as visual interpretation, graphical interpretation, and revisiting the material in case of relating it to the memory recalling, and also reviewing it with the scaffolding objectives. So to conclude, cognitive science definitely contribute in a major way to the teaching practice, provided the educationists, scientists, and the cognitive scientists and the policymakers and the teachers may apply these teaching practices when it was successful on the trial basis. So we need to trial them out and then we can apply them. Summary: cognition can be defined as a mental processing abilities which enable people on such a daily problems such as memory learning, problem solving, evaluation, reasoning, and decision making. So it helps us to make us think much better. So when it comes to the stages of cognitive development, when we know that we are going to cater to the students, we should know their age level descriptions and achievements are so. And which stage of cognitive development is that? So this is very, very important. As we are seeing here, Mr. Jean Piaget, he is specifically important in the sphere as he presented the cognition development for the children from birth to adulthood for the different stages of sensory motor stage, pre-occupational stage, concrete operational stage, and formal operational stage. So what are the skills that they acquire in this cognitive skills that the students acquire is a perception of visual perception or auditory perception, attention, focus attention, sustained attention, divided attention, memory, short-term memory, working memory, long-term memory, visual memory, auditory memory, logical reasoning, deductive reasoning, and inductive reasoning. So when it comes to the cognitive process, these are the skills, these are the processes which are involved: attention, language, learning, memory, perception, and thought. So when we relate it to the classroom environment, so with the concept of Bloom's technology, integrating with the cognitive skills. So this is how it normally works. So in the whole process, what should we understand is retrieval practice is a promising approach, improving learning with 3 R's, that is 3: recall, recognition, and relearning. So with cognition, people would know and what people know and think. But with metacognition, people will know how people think about their own thinking. So cognitive factors in learning involves various cognitive components like attention, perception, executive function, and reasoning. It also involves various strategies that one uses to learn something new. On the other hand, metacognitive factors involve monitoring and evaluation, and the self-study is very, very important of cognitive factors. So when you grow a metacognition, I am thinking, I'm noticing, and I'm monitoring. So intuitive mind is a sacred gift, but the rational mind is a faithful servant. So moving ahead. So what is metacognition? We need to develop definitely this kind of awareness in the student. What are we doing? Why are we doing this? Where are we going? How are we going to go there? Why we need to know when we do not know what to do, how should we act? So it's a kind of self-regulation. It creates a kind of self-regulation in students, monitoring and their own comprehension, assessing their own abilities without the teacher's help. Such self-regulation or the metacognitive skills are one of the most ultimate goals of learning. So metacognition literally beyond knowing what one knows and doesn't know, promoting the student ability to self-monitor levels of understanding and predict how well he or she will be able to do on a particular task. It is about thinking, one's thinking, and the knowledge and understanding of how we know, what we know, and how we are going to do. That includes the monitoring as well. So what is metacognition? Metacognition is thinking about thinking, as we have seen. This means while metacognition cognitive processes allow normal functioning of the individual, metacognition takes it to the next higher level of making a person more aware of his cognitive processes. So metacognition helps impact the learning process and the outcome. So metacognition is the awareness of one's own learning. It entails the understanding and the goals of the learning process, figuring out the best strategies for learning, and assessing whether the learning goals are being met. Metacognitive strategies empower students to think about their own thinking. This awareness of the learning process enhances their control over their own learning. It also enhances the personal capacity for self-regulation and managing one's own motivation for learning. So metacognition, simply put, is process of thinking about their own thinking, and it is very important aspect of everyone's school and life, as it involves self-reflection on one's current position, future goals, potential actions, strategies, and the results. So when students are metacognitive, they understand themselves as learners and the given task. So it will help them to adopt various strategies on how to use them in a variety of situations. Whether it is a comprehension or develop a connection or a strategic or a reflection, it could be on any level. That is before, present, and after. So most closely associated with teachers' instructional practices, teachers' metacognitive practices, if done effectively, can lead to student-led self-regulation. So moving ahead, what is metacognition? Why is metacognition important? It improves the student planning. It improves student monitoring with open-mindedness. It improves students or the learners' evaluation process. It improves students' resourcing, grouping, note-taking, pre-testing, and the complex tasks as well. And also summarizing, deduction, induction, concept mapping, peer instruction, elaboration, Socratic dialogues, KWL structures, and graphic organizers. So it is definitely an interdisciplinary understanding. So this is what it really helps the learning. It makes the learning more successful. In summary, metacognition is thinking about thinking, occurs before, during, and after doing the task. Before, it helps in planning stage. During, it helps to self-monitor. After the task, it helps them to evaluate and improve. Adaptation of these metacognition theories in a learning environment involves strategies and approaches. Let's see about the strategies. When it comes to the instructional strategies, it characterizes performances. That is, students' academic process. This we all know, SAMing, is student function of innate ability, learned ability, motivation, effort, and the environment. That makes the student aware that they are responsible of their own learning. It states objectives of learning outcomes, provide practices, tests, and homeworks. So we need to provide guided practice before homework. Have students participate in a complex task such as presentation and report writing as well. Instructional strategies number 2, for monitor student progress and provide feedback as the educators, distinguish deep and surface learning, promote reciprocal teaching and reading, provide information about reading techniques, teach content in multiple contexts such as reading, discussion, labs, demos, presentation, and provide abstract representation. Instructional strategies number 3, address preconceptions, identify relevant knowledge and skills, very importantly, explicitly define, characterize metacognitive and self-regulatory approaches, teach mastery skills, provide information about study skills, time and effort, set high expectations for student performances. Now, instructional strategies number 4, use mnemonics. Inform assessment should focus on making students' thinking visible both to teachers and students, encourage reflection and revision, provide timely and usual feedback. Planning for instruction should include the analysis of the required knowledge and the skills required for problem solving. So metacognition is a self-regulated learning, a process by which a person actively searches for relationships and patterns to resolve contradictions and bring coherence out of a set of experiences. Contradictions lead to disequilibrium, accommodation, and assimilation. Self-regulation begins with exploration and progresses through invention and application. The work of self-regulation calls the students to identify patterns, draw inferences, and make comparisons. Self-regulation is essential in order to increase both declarative and procedural knowledge. So when it comes to the self-regulatory strategies, these are the things as educators we should never fail to do. Compare performance against a set of performance standards. Compare performance against stated objectives. Predict outcomes on various tasks. Reciprocal reading. Reciprocal teaching. Self-regulatory strategies 2. Note failures to comprehend. Give them practice tests. plan ahead and apportion time and memory, promote active listening, analysis of the problem solving, explain what it is done, why is it done. So when it comes to that, how metacognition and assessment capable learners are connected. The connection between the metacognition and assessment capable learners is a learning aim of any set of lessons is to get students to learn the skills of teaching themselves and the content of understanding that is self-regulating their own learning. That is, I am thinking, I'm noticing, I'm wondering, I'm feeling, I'm seeing. So thinking about themselves, thinking about the thinking stems. This requires help students to develop multiple strategies of learning and to realize why we need to invest in deliberate practice and concentration on the learning. So strategies and outcome is that we could employ reading strategies, writing strategies, processing and recalling strategies, possible selves and goal setting strategies, community building strategies, mathematical strategies. So the 2 layers of problem solving: select appropriate strategy for the problem and apply and monitor the strategy, and thinking and monitor the process of thinking as well. So the strategies include how to approach a given task, evaluate the progress, and monitor and adjust, modify, change. So before learning, ask yourself, what is my goal? So this is what we need to direct the students. Before learning, ask yourself, what is my goal? What is the best way to reach it? Have I done a task like this before? Will that same approach work this time? If not, what is the best plan for doing this task? During the task, ask yourself, how is my learning going so far in relation to the learning target and success criteria? Do I need to change my strategy? If I keep going like this, will I be successful? Will I be successful? After learning, ask yourself, did I reach my learning target? Why and why not? Why I did not? What worked well in doing this task? How did it work? Why did it work? Why it did not work well? Even that also one should ask for. If given a similar task in the future, will I be able to do it the same way, or am I going to adopt a similar? So it is self-regulatory learning, looking into self on their own potentials, their own learning, and this learner will take the responsibility of their own learning. So the criteria for self-evaluating is when they plan, what is the nature of the task? What is my goal? What is the kind of information strategies do I need to solve this issue? What is the best approach known to me is to approach this, to solve this. So self-monitor, do I have a clear understanding of what I'm doing? Does the task make sense to me? Am I reaching my goals, or do I need to make changes? So evaluate and revise. Again, very, very important. Have I reached my goal? What worked? What didn't work? What I would have done, I would do differently next time. So it prompts metacognition, prompting metacognition, thinking about their own thinking and action, an approach for the task or the problem which is effective, efficient, and adaptable. It includes method of selecting the appropriate strategy, applying, monitoring, and adjusting use of the strategy, evaluating the progress using the strategies. So relating it to the KWL chart, what I already know, what I want to know, what I've learned. Did I learn anything new? Who or what helped you in learning? What do I need to help with? What are you most pleased with? With my knowledge, what do I need, what to learn next? Do you remember what we learned during the learn today? So in that case, feedback and assessment is very, very important. Feedback to the student can be focused on self-regulation effect. Such feedback can have major influence of self-efficacy, self-regulatory proficiencies, and self-beliefs about the student learning. So when will it actually benefit the student while using metacognition? It changes from the fixed mindset to the growth mindset. It increases the motivation and also the effort. It increases student ownership of the learning. It has most positive attitudes and improved performances. So creating a conducive environment for promoting metacognition is that create an environment for risk-taking, make deliberate mistakes, think loud across the content areas and situation, coming out of the box situation, moving ahead from the comfort zone, convey the message to everyone that we can always learn from a mistake and promote growth mindset. That is, there is always a place, a chance for change and growth. So being metacognitive, we are all winners to finish the race. So start line, get set, ready, go. Keep on moving, keep on tracking. Finish line, did you make it? How successfully you are able to move. So that helps in the thought process. So in summary, to relate it to the today's topic, cognitive science must combine neurology, psychology, anthropology, linguistic and statistics, and women's studies, which might combine the gender studies, history, literature, biology, etc., etc. Public health, which might combine medicine, sociology, and psychology. So with all these disciplines, how we are going to a simple strategic solution is interdisciplinary instruction. An example of interdisciplinary teaching is that food is studied in every discipline and can serve as a theme for interdisciplinary instruction. A science teacher may teach the children about the life system and that exist in the river, while the social studies teacher might be able to help the students research the local history and people who used to the river for food and transport. So these all things, this helps with the metacognition that benefits the interdisciplinary learning. It is student-centric. It with increased cognitive gains, authentic real life learning environment, increased critical thinking and problem-solving skills, highly engaging with the highlights of the learner, strength, but not the shortcomings. So it opens doors for the students to develop interest in a variety of the content areas. So definitely it is an engaging and relevant pedagogy. Interdisciplinary instruction is engaging students because it is structured in a way that moves from student learning beyond just learning for learning's sake. When interdisciplinary instruction, students are assessed on the effectiveness with which they create solutions to real world problems, which is very, very important. Any education which is not related to life is not an education at all. So when students are allowed to take the lead on the learning by practicing critical thinking skills and extend beyond the classroom walls, students will naturally become more engaged in their learning. Why does interdisciplinary approach to learning lead to student success? Because it focuses on student-centered learning, critical thinking skills, and problem-solving strategies. So through interdisciplinary learning, students are challenged to discover meaningful connections between the content areas that they have traditionally been taught in isolation. That discovery of connection allows the students to apply concepts and new understandings in a novel and creative ways, positioning them as innovators, problem solvers, and critical thinkers. Rather than striding towards a predetermined conclusion or a correct answer, students will direct their own learning by determining themselves for what the output of the inquiry will be. Learning relates to directly students' own experience, assets, and ideas. Thereby, it will enhance their critical thinking skills. Developing students' critical thinking skills empowers them to make sense of the world around them through rational, curious lens. Interdisciplinary learning encourages students to reflect critically on every new single idea, issue they encounter, considering it from multiple perspectives. At the same time, they become more deeply aware of their own perspectives, including their values, beliefs, and attitudes, enabling them to recognize and reconstruct bias in them and others. Further, thinking critically through interdisciplinary learning approach allows the students to identify global concepts and that cut across disciplines and apply those concepts in inventive ways. There is rarely only one way to solve a problem. It is also rare that evidence-based solutions to the problem lie exclusively in one content area. By capitalizing both on declarative and procedural knowledge across the multiple content areas, students can leverage insights that build upon the unique strength of individual disciplines and offer solutions to complex problems. Students can accept uncertainty and ambiguity in the learning, develop an ability to evaluate the information and from multiple and sometimes conflicting perspectives also. This leaves the students prepared to gain a deeper understanding of concepts and ideas in a way that is essential to thriving in the world that we cannot accurately predict. So these three strategies help in the interdisciplinary teaching. Strategies that help in the interdisciplinary teaching are contextualizing very clearly and conceptualizing and the problem centering. So with these three strategies, with these three approaches of the interdisciplinary teaching, social sciences, multi-cross and transdisciplinary will be able to provide an inclusive delivery. That is what is very important, because in a class of 50, 60, it is definitely a heterogeneous mixture. So we cannot have one set of problems, one set of tasks, one worksheet, one task for all the 60 students. So it should be an inclusive based, knowing about the students very well, their capacities very well, their thought process very well. That's how it really helps. So para-education in a regular classroom, what are the pros and cons? That's what we are going to see. A para-education in a classroom's education, what to do, how to go about with them. As we all know, we are all unique. Nobody thinks the same way. Not everyone thinks the same way. So everybody experiences the world differently. These differences are inherent from the neurology that we have studied in the ways our brains are wired to process and respond to information. So neurodiversity in the classroom is something which we cannot give up. Neurodiversity refers to the diversity of the human brain and cognition. For instance, sociability, learning and attention, mood and other mental functions. And this is quite, everybody is quite familiar with this. So what strategies that we need to adopt is, we should adopt strength-based strategies which help the students to succeed in school and life. So work on the strength of the students rather than working on the shortcomings of the students. So what is neurodiversity? It is a paradigm shift in our thinking process that helps to look at brain's diversity and the thought process, the biodiversity and the cultural diversity. Coined in 1990s by the journalist and the autism advocate, the phenomenon was used to deflect difficulties people face and positive dimensions of their lives. Neurodiversity refers to many different types of neurological differences in people with dyslexia, dysphasia, autism, and ADHD, among others, where people quite literally think differently. The idea is to focus on diversity rather than disability. So guided positive niche construction, practice differentiating instructions from neurodiverse brains. Includes components of positive niche construction, strength awareness, positive role models, technology assistance and universal design learning, strength-based learning strategies and human resources, positive career aspirations, and environmental modification also caters to that. So a strength-based classroom, a place where students with all sorts of labels come together as equals to form a new type of learning environment. One where there is no such thing as a normal student, where each and every learner is viewed so wonderfully. So modifications in the school environment that allows a seamless inclusion of neurodiverse students in the regular classroom, and timely information about how to integrate these strategies and assessment for each and every category with standard expectations. So if it is strength-based learning strategies, how or what a teacher should do, provide quiet area and clearly defined space for their belongings. Administer multi-sensory learning to teach skills. Variety ways of expressing oneself should be encouraged in a classroom situation. Model appropriate behaviors through role model or videos or thoughts, games and activities to practice social interaction, rich network of human resources, both inside and outside of the school, that educators can draw upon to support the social and emotional lives of the neurodiverse students. Equip sessions with AI and AR for students to explore. Artificial intelligence and augmented reality. Computer programs and applications that allow students with special needs to overcome obstacles and achieve success. Innovative learning strategies that are tailored to each and every student's unique strengths should be administered. And also, don't give up on the 7 C's of resilience, that is building up competence, building up confidence, building connections, building up character, then contribution, and building up self-control. Competence describes the feeling of knowing how we can handle the situation effectively. We can help the development of competence. How? Helping students focus on individual strengths, focusing on identifying mistakes on specific incidents, empowering students or the children to make decisions, recognizing their competencies of siblings individually and avoiding comparison, which is very, very important. These things help the students to develop their competence. And how to improve the confidence level of the students is that a child's belief in his own abilities is derived from competence. We can build confidence by focusing on the best in each child so that he or she can see it well as well. Clearly expressing the best qualities such as fairness, integrity, persistence, and kindness. Recognizing whether he or she has done well. Praising honestly about the specific achievements of not diffusing praise that may lack authenticity. Not pushing the child to take more than what he or she can realistically have. Connection. Developing close ties to the family and community creates a solid sense of security that helps to lead strong values and prevents alternative destructive paths to love and attention. You can help your child connect with others by building up a sense of physical safety and emotional security within the home and also the learning environment. Allowing the expression of all emotions so that the kids will feel comfortable reaching out during difficult times. Addressing conflict openly in a family to resolve the problems. Creating a common area where family can share time. Fostering healthy relationships that will reinforce positive messages. Building up character, which is very important. Children need to develop a solid set of morals and values to determine right from wrong, to demonstrate a caring attitude towards others, because it all reflects in their thought processes. To strengthen your child's character, start by demonstrating behaviors that affects others. That means good behaviors. Helping your child recognize himself or herself as a caring person. Demonstrate the importance of community and the community-related activities and contribution to the community. Encouraging the development of spirituality. Avoiding a racist and hateful statements of stereotypes. Contribution. Children need to realize that the world is a better place because they are in it. So they take the ownership of it. Understanding the importance of personal contribution can serve well as a source of purpose and motivation. Teach children how to contribute, communicating to children that many people in the world do not have what they need. Stressing the importance of serving people by modeling generosity. Creating opportunities for each and every child to contribute in a specific way. Coping up. Last but not the least, learning to cope up effectively with stress will help the child to be a better prepared and to overcome life challenges. Positive coping lessons include modeling positive coping strategies on a consistent basis. Guiding the child to develop positive and effective coping strategies, realizing that telling him or her to stop negative behavior, which will not be effective. Understanding that many risky behaviors all attempt to alleviate the negative thoughts. So very importantly, finally, building up self-control. Children who realize that they can control the outcomes of their decisions are more likely to realize that they have the ability to bounce back. That means they can handle the situation very well. Your child's understanding that he or she can make a difference further promotes competence and confidence. You can try to empower child by helping them to understand that life events are not purely random, that most things that can happen are the result of another individual's choice and actions. Learning that the discipline is about teaching, not punishing or controlling. Using discipline to help your child to understand that his actions produce certain consequences. So we are all in this together, and it benefits both, not only the student, but also the teacher as well. Starting with the Pygmalion in the classroom. Studies in 1960, educators have long been aware that the teachers who have the higher expectations of the students ends up with having higher achievement level of the student. And the reverse is true as well. When you have higher expectation of the teacher, you end up having achievements or higher achievement of the lesson as well. So neurodiversity contribute to the cognition ability, emphasis on looking at the students with special needs, primarily in terms of their gifts and abilities, and using these strengths to develop them to deal with the challenges. So there is an inclusive point which is adopted with us, with that positive view pays off in dividends as the student rise to the expectations of the teachers. So we need a growth paradigm to replace a deficit paradigm. The pioneers of the special education in the first half of the 20th century used these terms to describe neurodiverse individuals as moron, feeble-minded, minimally brain damaged, and educationally handicapped. In the 21st century, we are rediscovering, rather, the people with neurodiversities possess gifts that often dovetail with cutting-edge careers in information technology, entrepreneurship, and science. It's a time that special educators use this knowledge to help the students affirm positive futures for themselves. Neurodiversity supports the inclusion movement, definitely. Students with special needs who are included in the classroom develop more positive views of themselves, form friendships with an improved thought process with neurotypical kids, and are better able to keep up with the curriculum and learn important academic skills. Neurodiversity helps support inclusion by convincing the regular classroom that the teacher that adding a neurodiverse student will actually make the classroom better, but the students with neurodiversities will bring in positive qualities, attributes, and gifts to make the positive contribution to the classroom. It aligns the school, other programs, and the policies of diversities as well. Virtually all schools have policies that promote the value of diversity, both cultural and diversity, honoring the students from different races, ethnic groups, gender roles, etc., and the biodiversity to the classes and the units of biology and the related disciplines. Some of the school districts have even departments of diversity to promote these policies. So neurodiversity can be viewed as another positive contribution, another positive thought to this overarching commitment to the diversity, and should be integrated well in both classroom lessons on diversity and education policies dedicating to promote equity in learning. So it helps to reform schools as well. Neurodiverse students are like canaries in the coal mine. The coal miners brought canaries down in the mines with them. If an air blockage developed, the canaries would fall off their perches for the lack of oxygen. This would warn the miners to get out. Students with special needs through the difficulties with academics, behavior, and attention help to reform and refine the education system with the focus on inclusion that will ensure the learning's benefit. So this means that this helps and it contributes more to the interdisciplinary, not only to the subject, but also to the students' differences. This means more hands-on learning, experiential learning, project-based learning, expeditory learning, art-based learning, brain-based learning are the main photo of the universal design of this learning that help the learners with the neurodiversities that will benefit all learners and the community. So definitely this can change the world. That is neurodiversity with the interdisciplinary learning. So we typically think of those individuals who have had a greatest impact on the world as super individuals who had an extraordinary power and expertise. However, when you begin to look at these individuals' lives, you see something entirely different. These individuals are both strengths and significant challenges. Some examples I would like to mention are Winston Churchill has the contact disorder and speech impediment. Henry Ford had learning disabilities. Thomas Edison had clear signs of ADHD. Agatha Christie had dyslexia. Helen Keller had significant sensory impediments. This list could go on. This should remind us that the kids with special needs in our classroom may be the ones who take the crucial discoveries of the key decisions for the world in the coming decades. As the line goes, the imitation games, the story of computer prisoner, Alan Turing. Sometimes it is people, no one can imagine anything of who do the things no one can imagine. So with that, we have learned about the interdisciplinary application in a classroom situation as well, not only pertaining to the subject, not only pertaining to the skills, but also to the inclusive factor as well. So relating education to life is very, very important. Any education which is not related to life is definitely futile. So to relate education to life, exactly what is last but not the least is that transdisciplinary. What is transdisciplinary teaching? Is moving beyond just teaching across the disciplines, using common themes and topics and thought process or issues that thread through the different courses. Transdisciplinary requires the collaboration between the disciplines to create a cohesive curriculum in which the students collaborate to solve multifaceted problems. Transdisciplinary requires innovation, cooperation, and intentionality. And what's next for cognitive research? Cognitive science was born out of the desire to understand who we are, why we think, and how we behave. As we find more about the neural pathways, responses to stimuli, that's what we started with, and the conditions, and the dabble with technologies such as artificial intelligence and cognitive science becomes so much more rather than a way to understand the meaning of life. Thanks to the advances in the cognitive experimentation techniques and technology and scientists, that's all those things that we have seen, the strategies, the theories, and the implementation in the classroom, how to revolve, how to revive everything. Scientists are getting closer to discovering breakthroughs that could cure debilitating diseases such as Parkinson's diseases and designing computer algorithms. So where we are heading through is very, very important. This is the optimum. This is the objective. In the 2020 Future Skills Skills Report, the Institute of Future Think Tank emphasizes that the need for skills transdisciplinary develops. Many of today's global problems are just too complex to be solved by one specialized discipline. That is, these multifaceted problems require transdisciplinary solutions. While throughout the 20th century, even greater specialization was encouraged. The next century will see transdisciplinary approaches take center stage. They describe the desired future workers as needing to speak language of multiple disciplines with an in-depth understanding of one or more fields, but also be able to converse in the language with a broader range of the disciplines. In sum up, transdisciplinary provides the students with the skills and complexity of the thought that the employers are seeking in the future workplace, and well-developed transdisciplinary programs in higher education provide students with unique opportunities to develop these skills. So with that, we come to the end that cognitive sciences integration into the interdisciplinary learning from different walks of life perceive education as not a preparation for life, but life itself. Thank you so much. On that note, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to IIU for giving me this wonderful opportunity, as they have always been inspiring, inventing, and igniting young minds. Thank you so much. My special regards and thanks to Mr. Piyush Pandit sir and the whole team of IIU for doing such a fabulous job. And many thanks to all the wonderful audience who have been with me. And my simple apologies for not sharing the screen in the beginning. Sorry. Thank you so much.